Multilateral trade expert Felix Okach, many thanks for joining us on Bottom Line Africa.
Thanks for welcoming me here.
And we'll get to these concerns that the EU as well as the United States have over China's diplomacy. But before we get there, many times speaking of the foreign debt burden, we're speaking of potential debt trap diplomacy. But what is debt trap to begin with? What is the debt trap?
Thank you for that question on debt trap. I'll take example of an individual. When you're debt trapped, it means that you got a fixed income and the bulk of it you're paying debt. You don't have any money for extra development,
right,
except paying the debt and having your daily bread. You can never think getting out of it. And getting out of it is a challenge. It's like being in a poverty trap. There are no incomes and you're there. So that's a debt trap.
Right.
But in an economy like Kenya, it's not easy to talk about debt trap because the economy is expanding in the sense the taxes are expanding. We are exporting flowers, coffee, tea. Our Kenyans who are abroad are remitting.
Right.
So that's keeping the dollar level, the rate of dollar, fairly stable. So we are not in a debt trap situation now, but we can get there.
Right. But let's discuss that because initially I understand one of the key indicators is how much debt we're borrowing versus how much we're exporting as a country, how much we're making as a country versus how much we're borrowing. When it comes to Kenya, for example, we're meant to be exporting at about a percentage of about 21%, but Kenya's is way over at about 27%. So we're not exporting enough vis-a-vis the debt that we have. Is this a well thought out plan when we're borrowing from foreign countries?
Let me give the issue of a debt a macro outlook. Because there's a debt we're borrowing from outside. There are also assistance from developing partners within projects.
Right.
There's also money which is borrowed locally through treasury bills. The government borrows to do certain things and their taxes being collected.
Right.
So all that put in place, that's when you come and say that we are borrowing too much or too less.
As it is, Kenya's debt is about 57% of the GDP, which is quite high. And there's been a proposal before Parliament now to put a cap on Kenya's foreign borrowing to about 6 trillion shillings. There have also been concerns raised by the Treasury over the sustainability of Kenya's foreign loans. Where does that leave us in terms of the fact that in June we're likely to take another Eurobond? The President was in China just the other day seeking more deals for the SGR, meaning our debt is going to go higher.
Thank you on that question of debt going higher. But I've told you that the economy is expanding. Things are moving on a daily basis. Say if the debt is 6 trillion, we're not paying it back today.
Right.
It's spread over time. You agree with me? That's one. Two, over time, incomes are also rising. Come 6 years in line, we might be able to cover that debt sufficiently.
Right.
What Kenya needs to do is to look at the aspect of corruption and wastage. Is the wastage which is the biggest burden. If there was no wastage and corruption, the debt is at 60% should be fairly sustainable.
Is it?
And even if you look at an individual, say you as an individual, for you to buy a house, to buy a car,
right,
to buy certain things, you borrow, isn't it?
Let's discuss that because we seem to be dealing with a cash-strapped government that continues to refinance its debts by borrowing from one person to pay another, to pay Paul, as opposed to returning much of its debts from its own. The question tax still borrowing more. So that goes back to
Kenya government is collecting the public taxes. It pays civil servants. You're not borrowing money to pay civil servants,
right,
to pay for services. That means the domestic part enough our obligations. But now the issue is development. Because to develop a railway line, develop power line,
right,
develop certain infrastructure, you might not have enough money. That's when you borrow, and then you yesterday where this economy things put in place, it's the economy. The 3.8, which is going so the buy if good.
But it's in the European Union as lending, what would I say, mode, even if the US and the EU seemingly for other firms to tap into the Asian market. Let's discuss whether this really is diplomacy. Is it a two-way agreement?
Project for China.
Right.
They said in the one of Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, a bit of build roads, build bridges, and then use that as and so as much as they're giving the loans, those are their plans. In our case, it's like when I'm borrowing money from you, I have to see what am I going to benefit out of it. It's important for us to negotiate that if you're doing the railway line, we need people from. If you're going to do certain projects, we need 10,000 Kenyans to be taken to railway management. By the time the railway is on, they're the ones working. So it's how we negotiate on what we need. But if you don't negotiate on what you need, you lose and they don't care. But Chinese, this is their plan to move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
There is an issue that caused quite a bit of controversy earlier this year, and that was the details of the contract surrounding Kenya and China's agreement to expand the SGR to Naivasha. And some of these issues then were that the fact that Kenya's key strategic assets, both at home and abroad, are at risk of being seized by the Chinese government should there be a default in repaying the standard gauge railway loan, something that raised quite a bit of eyebrows. Now, the president didn't come out and say, you know, there really is no trap here. We're borrowing to develop in our own country. But how do we solve such concerns with the issue of a default being quite a reality in this country? Yeah,
default is any situation. We don't know what can happen in the future. But from our perspective, this aspect of risk should have been taken care of by the fellows who are signing the agreements, who are looking to what we need, who are saying if in the event of default, this is what will happen, or we can reschedule. When the clear. And remember when it was being asked that let us see the agreement which was signed, it didn't come out clearly. The AG was agreement signed.
Right.
Because for Kenya as a sovereign state, and when you're born, signed. But the way China has done something, is it port? Who tells you they cannot come here? It's possible. So those are the issues we should look into going forward.
Right. Brings in then the issue of public participation when it comes to borrowing these loans and taking back to the proposal of capping foreign debt that is before Parliament as we speak. Are you satisfied as a expert on public participation that through loans, for example?
I think it's not well done because for public participation, it means that you should say this is what we need. You send out notice in public places, public barazas, newspapers, people debate, the bill moves ahead.
Right.
I'd say a bill coming in Parliament on that line. You see, with the new constitution in Kenya, we get it. That's of course in certain mysteries here and there, but the project is working. So it's for us to justify that actually it's working.
Right.
Now, going to the next one, let's do proper public participation, proper involvement, and knowing what we need to do. The new question, I should know if the future.
Yeah. When we talk about international deal, of them here, kind of foreign
to what is interest place on can now inflation of this because our is low, other that not right, but mismanagement inflation goes up. Then they go and now if inflation goes to that will rise that becomes so not to make me but it is
right. Because management is one of the way of gaining revenue, as well as which I believe for
yes.
It for the government. How then revenue make from our process?
It means whatever is, if there are bills, but if my for they pay but go out, take a travel out, waste money. Avoid foreign travels so that much of the activities around and improve on the in the horticulture sector, of course, we are lucky because foreigners are getting involved in. If all those things are being managed well, it will create employment, money will circulate in the economy, and will do a better country.
Right.
And even the debts can be paid.
And it all sounds very good, but we've been borrowing and taking Eurobonds since many Kenyans can remember. And every day we complain of the rising cost of living and the rate of inflation in the country. So going forward, what expectations are there, seeing as we are getting ready to take another Eurobond as of June or July in this year? We're also getting ready to take another loan, perhaps from the IMF. What expectations should Kenyans have with these loans?
What expectations that Kenya should have is that make sure we put pressure on the fellows in offices not to waste the money. Mm-hmm. You see the power project, how a lot of money. You see parastaffs wasting a lot of government funds. If that was stopped, then we would be somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's important for Kenyans to make noise, talk about it through the press and all of the issues so that those things are resolved.
Right. So as long as there is corruption, we're likely not to see the value of the loans that we take in as a country.
I don't think we'll see, because you see, as I told you, with the corruption, the bulk of it will come, some of it will remain outside, some of it will be misused. Then you're not given the right picture. At the end of the day, you still, me and you will complain, but no activity is being done. Right. But usually when you borrow a given amount of money, and you put it in proper use, it turns out to be beneficial.
All right. Many thanks. That is a very enlightening conversation there. Multilateral trade expert Felix Okachi, they're speaking to us.